Okay, we're in Blackboard now, and I wanted to first, everybody seems to have gotten the gist uh, of how to submit documents. Back in week one, I just wanted to point out that the Dropbox for the presentation is in this folder, and I had made the due date on Saturday midnight of this week for this presentation. And as I said last week, just choose two of these categories and do a brief, less 8 to 10 slides, and just show, discuss two principals, two firms that specialize in each one of the designs of the categories that you have selected. Right now, I'm going to go into the content again. This week, week two, in week two, we're going to do the visual cues, and we study those, which are what the brain sees. Last week, we talked about the direct and mediated images and mental images, that things we recall. And now we're going to discuss why it is that we recall these things. And now here, I start this with this Dropbox, this assignment. When you look at this picture, one of these four items, color, form, depth, or movement, comes to mind. There's no right answer. However, everybody, when looking at an image, will have a certain response to that image. Your assignment for this is for you to submit a graphic for each one of these visual cues and discuss briefly why you feel that that graphic or that image represents that cue. Now, in order to do that, I've given you these blue items, and in particular, this one is a very dry lecture about the visual cues. And I do want you to go through this. And again, as I mentioned last week, it really doesn't matter. You don't have to memorize everything, but it's important that you at least read over this, and you can use some of this information as you discuss the images that you're providing in your assignment. I do want to point out that triangles, most dynamic and active shape is the triangle. And that's something that's going to come up in a test later on. Incidentally, when it comes time for your exams, you'll know that you can go back while you're taking the exam and check on these items, just in order for you to successfully do the exam. So that is your, I wanted to show you about that first assignment. I also gave you these other blue items, which will help you as you go on, as you do this assignment. And now, color is one of the four visual cues. And I just wanted to go over a few things today that as far as color goes. And well, before I go into that, let me just quickly go over this assignment. This is your VisCom People assignment. This first one, incidentally, is due this Saturday. And again, you won't be penalized if it's beyond the due date. However, I like to keep you on schedule so that you will keep up with all these projects. VisCom People Identification is due a week from Saturday. And in this one, you're going to identify each one of these people and each one of these movements. For the people, just tell me where they contributed in graphic design, and you can choose one of these bulleted items. You should also, if there's something noteworthy, for example, Milton Glaser designed the I Love New York logo. That should be mentioned when you do him. But that is a simple way to do this assignment, so you get familiar with the different people who have been influential in visual communications. On the fourth column, I want you to simply tell me when it occurred, define it as briefly as possible, and give me an example of a person who represented the movement. And I explained all that down here. Again, with all of these things, you should do them in Word or do them in anything as long as it's a recognizable file format that you submit. Let's see, waiting. Oh, let me admit this person. Okay, another person just came in. All right, now the next thing I want to go over is color. Because that is one of the visual cues, color, form, depth, and movement, this is the opportunity for you to learn some of the most important things about color. And I gave you this website on color theory. And this is basically explaining what you should all know, and no matter what field you're in, that there are two systems of color. And one is the subtractive and one is the additive. And before I even go to explain that, hue, value, and saturation are the components of color. Hue is the color, value is the lightness of the color, and saturation is the intensity of the color. Now, going on to this color wheel here, this represents the subtractive system, and the primary colors, as you all know from previous experience, are red, yellow, and blue. And theoretically, when you mix all of them, when you mix these, you can't mix to get those colors. However, you can mix them with each other and get any other color. And the reason why it's called subtractive is because when you are working with pigment, like paint, for example, and you keep adding all the colors on top of each other, the result is right here, black, which is a complete absence of light rays being emitted from the mixture. That's why it's called the subtractive model. For you, it's just important to know that red, yellow, and blue are the primaries in this system, and the complements are opposite them on the color wheel. Purple is opposite yellow, green is opposite red, and of course orange is opposite blue, right here. The other color theory, the other color system, is the additive system, which is red, green, and blue, RGB. And you people are more accustomed to seeing that because that is what is colored light. That represents the additive system, meaning if you take all the colors and you put them together, you're going to get pure white. And you've heard that whole example where you put a prism up to sunlight and you're going to see a rainbow. So with that in mind, I'm going to just pare it down to the most important thing for you to remember is when you're working in graphic design or in anything digitally, it is working in the RGB mode, red, green, and blue, is the best way to work. In Photoshop, for example, you have more functionality in RGB than you do in CMYK, and we will go over that as the semester goes on. CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which is the equivalent to the red, yellow, and blue of the subtractive system. Now, if you have any questions or if I'm going too fast, yell, but I'm going to go over how we learn one of these things, which is hue and value. Now, at the bottom of this website, there is this tutorial, hue has value. And I'm going to use this opportunity, take this opportunity to go over that with you, to introduce you to Illustrator. At this point, I hope you have all been able to download the software. Today, we'll talk about Illustrator. Next week, we will also have a project where you're going to be doing Illustrator. We're also going to do Photoshop coming up and InDesign as well. And as I mentioned before, if you are not able to get these things, let me know, but you are not going to be penalized if you are unable to download. However, I did find out that you have all been approved to get it if you follow those instructions that I provided in the first week at the top of Blackboard. Now, without further ado, let's just go quickly so I can run over what this tutorial will demonstrate to you. And I'm going to click on here and go to this. All right, this is Adobe Illustrator. Hi, Maddie. This is Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to go over a few basic things, assuming that no one knows what to do. I opened this up, I did File New, and I did an 8.5 by 11 landscape page, and then I went to View, and I went Show Rulers, and I showed my rulers. And the reason for that is that you access guidelines in all of this software, all of these programs, by dragging them from rulers. So the first thing I'm going to do to show you, I'm in my selection tool, the black arrow. I point to this ruler, and I'm going to go out and put this at 3/4 of an inch. And as I go through this, I'm just going to go over some very basic steps for you to do this project. And we're going to click on this tool, which is the rectangle tool. And I'm coming out onto my artboard and clicking. And this comes up. And right away, I'm going to type in 1.5 inches, tab 1.5 inches, and I'm going to hit OK. And now in Illustrator, everything that's created is a path, and it's showing that it's selected with anchor points. That's these things. And every object in Illustrator can be filled. Right now it's filled none. Now I'm going to make it easier for you to see, I'm going to Window, and I'm going to show my swatches right there. And I'm going to make this object green, just so you can see, and make it easier to move around. Now this box here, if I bring that in front, that's the stroke of the object. That's the line around it. I don't want that to be filled. I can make that any color, but I don't want to. So I'm going to go now and point to this one, which is the fill. Now watch carefully. I'm taking my move tool, my selection tool, and I'm moving this up right here to the guideline. Now the next step is to make a row of boxes, and we're going to change the hue, which is the color of every box. So I have my box selected, and incidentally, if I click outside, it's not selected, and I can't do anything unless I select it. So I'm pointing to the box, clicking it, it's now selected. Now I'm going up to the object menu, transform, move, and this dialog box starts with horizontal and it's selected. So immediately I'm going to move it 2 inches, and then I'm going to hit the tab key and it toggles down, goes down to vertical. I don't want it to go anywhere vertically, so I'm going to go 0. Another tab shows the distance is going to be 2 inches. Now, when you're working at any of these dialog boxes, look for the preview button, which shows you what's going to happen when you get out of the dialog box. That's very important so you don't waste time going in and out of the menu. So right now, I preview it and I'm putting the box a 1/2 inch away from the first box. And I'm going to copy it like that. The next thing is to repeat it and do 3 more boxes. Now this is called power duplicating. It's very simple. If you have a PC, you're going to hold the CTRL, which is the control key, and then hit D. If it's a Mac, it's Command D, D, D. Like that.
I need help for a second.
Okay.
Just 1 second.
Okay, everybody just hold for 1 second. We have a technical problem. I will be back in 1 minute. Thank you.
I pressed something.
You'll get out. I'll figure it out afterwards. Okay, I'm back. All right. I'm back. Now, I want you to, what we're gonna do right now is we have to change the hue of each one of these boxes. I'm pointing to this one here, and I'm changing the color. And again, I'm repeating for you what you have to learn, that hue means color. I'm going to make this one, let's go that color, dark blue. I'm going to make this one this color. Then this one, let's call that one red. And finally, this one, we'll make it that color. And again, it's entirely up to you. Now, the whole purpose of this lesson is hue has value, and I'm going to put the title into it and show you another technique. There's my text tool. I'm going to draw a box. I'm typing in hue has value. Now I'm going to select it. Now I'm going to make it smaller by doing Shift Command or Shift Control, comma, makes it smaller. Shift Command period makes it bigger. And I wanted to introduce you to that keystroke, which you can apply in all of the software that you're using. Shift Command or Shift Control period makes it bigger. Shift Command or Shift Control comma makes it smaller. Now then, back to the selection tool. I'm going to show you now a way to take this row and make another row underneath it. So we're going to do, the quickest way is called marquee select. With a marquee select, you put your mouse above the first block. I'm going to draw a frame, a fence that touches each one of the blocks, like that. I selected all of them. Now, if I click outside, I deselect. Another way to do it, which is taking more time, is clicking the first one, holding the shift, second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one. But I don't want to do that. It's quicker to go like this. Touch them all with the frame. So it goes like that. All right, now, let's use our object menu and our transform the way we did the first row. We're going to go Object, Transform, Move, and you're going to go horizontal. We're going to keep it 0. Then we hit the Tab key, and the vertical field appears, and we're going to go down 2 and hit the Tab key. Now you notice it's going to put another row underneath. That's cool. That's what we want to do. If, for example, it goes above it, then you would have to put a minus in here in order to offset it that distance. But right now it's showing me what I want to do. So the preview shows it's going to give me another row. I'm going to hit copy. There you go. Now we have our second row. So the purpose of the lesson is to see that these different hues have different values. And how do you do that? We have to make them achromatic. We have to take out the color. We desaturate them so that you can see the value. So let's take the color panel. And by the way, I'm going to close it out. If it's not on yours, you go Window and you go Color, like so. Now, with the color panel selected, like that, excuse me, with the color panel selected, I am going to point with my selection tool to the first block on the second row. I clicked it. It's green. I want to make it achromatic so I can see its value. So I go up to the color panel, and this is called a hamburger or the contextual menu. I click on that, point to grayscale. Now I click on the next one. Go over here, grayscale. Again, with all this stuff, the more you do, the more you understand how quick you can do things. And there it is. And then make this red one up to grayscale, and this one up to grayscale. There you go. Now we've completed the lesson. So we have all of these different hues are reflected. You can see the value of these hues compared to each other. And this is something that's just to demonstrate to you these terms, hue and value. It's also a way to introduce to you some very basic steps and good things to know as far as keyboard shortcuts. Now, when you do this, if you get a chance to do this, I want you to submit this as a JPEG. In this program, you go to File. Now, if you want to save the Illustrator file, you may. That would be Save or Save As. But if you want to export it as a JPEG, you have to go to the Export menu, Export As, and you go down here to Format, and let's make it into a JPEG. And then I'm going to cancel mine, but you won't. You'll just hit the Export button. So then, after you have exported it as a JPEG, you can put the JPEG into the Dropbox. So I'm going to go back to here, and this was the file. Right down here. Okay, so that would go into this Dropbox. Now, the other things back in Blackboard that will help you with all of the lessons this week, down here you have the visual cues with the Brain Sees PowerPoint. This will also, I suggest you look at this and you get an idea of how you can talk about the images that you're selecting for your visual cues assignment. Down here, this is color theory temperature, talking about more color theory. Now, have any of you any questions at this point? Or is there anything else you want me to do before I stop the sharing? Okay, I'm going to stop the sharing anyway and stop the recording.